Hello, this is Forecastyear reporting in. I just want to talk a little bit more about the Ebola situation and with a historical context regarding other pandemics we've endured, and in how they were handled versus how Ebola right now is being treated. These are regarding some flu pandemics that we had back in 1918, also tied into World War I. Some people say we're headed into World War III right now, so that would be an interesting parallel with an Ebola pandemic and how that might play out dynamically. We also had the Black Death bubonic plague type, the plague back in Europe several hundred years ago that wiped out a major part of the population then. And there's been a history where when there's been outbreaks or dangerous situations, we've had to quarantine people. There's been people who refused to be quarantined, and they finally had to be, found and kind of cornered and forcibly put into quarantine. And that's a politically unpopular thing to do, but that's looking more and more like the thing that we're going to have to do with Ebola to really contain it, and we're going to have to do that in a big way sooner rather than later. That's going to be politically painful to do. It won't be an easy thing to do. So that's going to be a real situation, but I believe that it's going to come to that, and that's going to be necessary. And the longer we delay, the worse the situation is going to get. A long time ago, there used to be quarantine boats that there would be, if there was disease on a boat, it would be quarantined and they would fly this flag. And there's many conventions and agreements that have been put in place. So it's quite surprising that this is not being followed closely with respect to Ebola, and that people are not having to go through quarantine first to get on an airplane and fly back to the United States. That's just phenomenal. That's not occurring. When the astronauts came back from the moon, they were quarantined for 3 weeks on a they call this an old quarantine facility, and they were put in quarantine for 3 weeks, and that was to make sure that they were void of any germs, and they were on these little trailers they put them on. They wouldn't bring back any communicable diseases to us on planet Earth. That was because they suspected they might have one, even though they knew it was a long shot. They did that anyway. But that was pretty incredible to see that was being done, but that was a necessary precaution. And it's incredible how reckless they're being with the Ebola situation, just letting people come back from, anybody come back from Africa to the United States and not having to go through quarantine first is just reckless and irresponsible. So, Black Death is a parallel. They lost a major part of the population. Black Death estimated to have killed 30 to 50% of Europe's total population. That's huge. Wow, 60% is how many is the death rate here on that we're seeing on Ebola. So if it shoots around, that's a parallel analogy we should look at is what happened with this pandemic and the Black Death in Europe and the socioeconomic price on society. It was horrific, what happened. So we need to brace ourselves at kind of that parallel, and also this one, the 1918 flu pandemic, and what happened there. Many millions of people perished in this thing. It's quite serious, and Ebola, people die in a very horrific kind of way with the hemorrhaging and the way they convulse and body fluids come out. So. Do your own history or historical review on pandemics and what happens, and also quarantines. The historical precedence on quarantines is significant, and it's amazing that there's not more isolation going on to contain this problem in Africa before it spreads dramatically. I think they just lack the political will or the economics and the real leadership on this thing. As I see it. But so everybody get ready for the situation. And if it spreads in Africa, I think eventually it's going to come to the United States. There's a period of time when they have it when it's not easy to detect. It's kind of what's called asymptomatic, and these asymptomatic carriers can bring it back, and they can't detect it, and then they're in society spreading the disease. Of course, they don't mean to, but that's just the situation. They don't know they've got it. So. That incubation period of 2 to 21 days for Ebola is a serious and dangerous window, and it's enough window for them to bring it on a flight back to the United States quite easily. Yeah, do your own homework on this thing, but I think it's going to spread dramatically until they get the political will to really contain it with major quarantines, and that's including suspected people or anybody that's been in the danger zone at all. I see that as politically hard to do, and that we simply don't have those kind of leaders in political power at this time. But hopefully they'll wake up and figure and kind of buck up to the need to assert real leadership on this thing. Thanks so much, and stay strong and stay vigilant. Forecastyear signing out.